So I had a great idea for a video today to talk about the Sony ZV-E1 and the Sony a7 IV and which camera I think would be best for YouTube. So I came out today to test the Sony ZV-E1 versus the Sony a7 IV and come to the conclusion, is the Sony ZV-E1 the best YouTube camera in 2023? Check out this view. Throughout this video, I'll be doing some test shots on both cameras, Sony ZV-E1 and a7 IV. I took a little hike here today. I'm about a half hour in. So stay tuned for some more test clips. So I headed outside for a hike to do some side-by-side comparisons of these two cameras. I then walked over 2 miles, took me about an hour, and I took about 20 pictures and maybe 5 videos. So I had a really great hike through the woods and came home without a video. So here we are getting into the A-roll. I'll overlay some of those shots here in this video and go over some of the features of the Sony ZV-E1 that I think make it a worthy contender to the a7 IV here for YouTube. I gotta get a hair check. That's why I look a little low, huh? Boom. Blast that guy. Yeah, there we go. All right. If you're in the market for a full frame camera body, by now you've definitely heard of the Sony a7 IV, and you've probably even heard of the ZV-E1. In this video, I'll break down why you might go with one of these over the other, and which one I think is the best YouTube camera. If your use case is video-centric, including vlogs, short films, YouTube, maybe even indie movies, then the ZV-E1 might be the choice here. At its core, it's a baby FX3 for about $1,000 less. It's the same 12 megapixel sensor, shoots 4K 60 with no crop, and is packed full of AI features that some might call a gimmick, but I actually think are very helpful for things like YouTube. It also offers a host of professional features like S-Log3, various picture profiles, and of course, Sony S-Cinetone colors. Starting with some of these gimmicky features that make it a standout for me, we'll go with Cine Vlog mode first. This could save you some time. It puts the letterbox bars at the top and the bottom of the screen for you automatically in the camera. Now I guess the downside would be that this locks in S-Cinetone colors. So it's the S-Cinetone profile only in Cine Vlog mode, which can be a tad warm for me, but if you know that you want that cinematic look and you want it in camera and don't have to worry about it in post, this is a great feature and I've definitely used it before. Second on the list for me is product showcase mode, where it uses eye autofocus, but it also lets you hold up a product and you don't have to cover your face in order to do it. Now it does give you little bars. The zone is about here of where it will focus. But if you've used other eye autofocus cameras, especially Sony's, you effectively have to hold the product up in front of your face if you want it to get the camera to focus on the product over your face. Whereas here I can move over just a little bit, still have good focus on my face. I pull in this camera lens, quick autofocus, and boom, back to my face. I didn't have to cover myself up while I was showing the product. That's extremely helpful and solves an actual issue that content creators definitely have. Boom, camera. Boom, face. It's cool. It's cool to play with. I enjoy it. All right, third on the list is dynamic active stabilization. Now, this effectively replaces gimbals. Not totally, but the stabilization in camera is actually really good. It does crop in a fair amount to use dynamic active stabilization, so just keep that in mind. If you're using a prime lens, you're going to want to pick your focal length accordingly if you're going to use dynamic active stabilization. Oh God, shooting directly into the sun while walking. I don't do a whole lot of vlogging, but here is what this looks like. Dynamic stabilization on the ZV-E1. Cropped in with a 24, so this is a little close, in my opinion. I probably wouldn't do this. If I was actually going to use this to vlog, I would want maybe a 20 mil so I could get just a little bit closer. Fourth, I think, is lens choice. You have options that are really inexpensive, the Samyangs of the world, and then you also have third-party options like Sigma. The 24-70 is a renowned lens for Sony E-mount. Another third-party option, Tamron, makes great lenses. This is the 70-180. Really happy I went with this inexpensive version because I don't use it all that often. And then all the way up to the Sony G Master line, if you want the top of the top professional quality lenses, Sony has something to offer you. And if you're just beginning in content creation or video or photo, it makes a lot of sense to pick up a third-party lens, save yourself a little bit of money, learn how to use the camera, and if you want to upgrade later, these things hold their value pretty well. You could sell it off secondhand or hang on to it, use it for a B cam or C cam in the future. All right, so that was a host of really good things with the Sony ZV-E1. And there is a little bit of bad here, or things that you may not like if you're coming from a professional camera. First being ergonomics. By itself, the camera is really hard to hold. It's a super lightweight body, but the grip is not long enough, which this can be remedied if you put it in a cage. I have the small rig cage with a grip extension on it on my copy, and that makes it better. But the other thing to note is weight distribution. So because the body is so light, it's kind of an all plastic build. When you put even a lightweight lens on it, like the Sony 50mm G Master, this is the f1.4, pretty light lens. It still feels imbalanced. Typically I use the Sigma 24mm f1.4 on the ZV-E1. It weighs about the same as that Sony 50mm, and it still feels top heavy. Now, if you throw something like a 16-35 zoom on it, or even the 24-70, the weight distribution is totally off. This thing definitely does best with lightweight lens options, and that's kind of what it's made for. Small form factor, lightweight package that has a lot of power. Photos. So if you are a hybrid shooter or you plan on taking a lot of photos, the 12 megapixel sensor just does okay. I guess the benefit here is the file sizes are a little bit smaller in RAW land, but something like the A7 IV 33 megapixel sensor really is just worlds above and beyond the 12 megapixel stills that come out of the Sony ZV-E1, which is to be expected. The A7 IV is a true hybrid camera, whereas the ZV-E1 is a vlogging camera first. So it's more video focused anyways. I've definitely used the ZV-E1 to take thumbnail images, which are going to be compressed down to 720p anyways. So as far as being the best YouTube camera, it actually does pretty good in my opinion for doing video and photo if this was your only camera. Another thing you'll hear people talk about is that it only has a single SD card slot. And while I do have the A7 IV here with dual card slots, I rarely ever shoot redundant because I'm not doing this professionally. If you were a wedding photographer or filmmaker, I totally see the need to have redundancy and have a second card slot that's recording the same information. For me, I typically set up card slot number 1 for photos and card slot number 2 for videos. So having a single SD card slot isn't a deal breaker for me. I just bought a bigger SD card. Photos and videos go on there just fine. I should knock on some wood because I haven't ever had any SD cards fail. Sure, my time is coming now that I've said this. But SD cards have gotten pretty good lately. As long as you're buying reputable brands, you're probably going to be okay. So we've heard all the good and a little bit of bad. I'm not sure I'd be able to argue that the Sony ZV-E1 is the best single camera to purchase. I was already in the Sony ecosystem and had some great lenses to choose from. I bought the A7 IV first and was looking for a B cam for YouTube and various other video work. So the ZV-E1 fit the bill. If you're new to the Sony mirrorless lineup, I just can't see somebody going out and spending $2,200 on this mirrorless camera body and another, let's call it $1,000 minimum on a lens to upgrade their production value. It feels to me like most people would just use their phone, and if they wanted to upgrade to a little bit better quality, they would take one of those steps in the lineup in between a phone and a full frame mirrorless camera. Maybe one of the crop censored options with cheaper lenses, or even a fixed lens point and shoot would do the trick in my opinion. It just seems cost prohibitive for beginners to be able to go out and spend $3,000. If you don't have a day job, these things are expensive, and it would be a hard purchase to justify if you are just starting out and aren't making any money on your content creation journey. Now, the flip side is, this is a great entry-level camera in the Sony mirrorless lineup. If you know you're going to be using these different cameras for years and you think about this as an investment in terms of you have lenses that can be used across multiple different camera bodies, you may be able to get a little bit of money back out of this if you sell it secondhand after you're done with it, then you might be able to justify this purchase. I sure did. This camera that I wanted to have as a B cam ended up being the camera that I film on all the time as my YouTube A cam now. It's a little bit easier to set up, it's a little bit lighter, it's a little bit smaller. I find it easier to just pick up and start recording with than the A7 IV. Until next time, take it easy.